Tropical Storm Franklin struggling towards Hispaniola on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for August 23rd. So most of the systems that we've had have deteriorated, in fact all of them in terms of wind speeds. Franklin is still the only tropical storm active at this time. Harold was named yesterday, early on in the early hours, and has now weakened to a depression after making landfall as a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm in southern Texas. Day 84 of Atlantic hurricane season, and it's still quite busy. Emily could regenerate at any time, and it's blowing up some decent convection and a 40% area of interest in the eastern Atlantic. Those chances though are decreasing somewhat. In the eastern Pacific we have 3 areas of interest that are all looking more likely to develop. 2 still at low chance, but 1 at moderate chance, now 50%, and could become a threat to the coast of Mexico within the 7-day period. 30% system will deliver a lot of rain to the coast of Central America, mainly Costa Rica and Nicaragua. 40% chance for another area of interest in the Western Pacific that we've been tracking for quite a while will generally head towards Japan. A 20% area of interest that we've also marked right now near the Philippines, and that could get some traction as it moves northwards at first and then turns back southwards again, and is likely to stall a little bit just south of the southern Ryukyu Islands. Seems to be a pattern this year, that is. In the Indian Ocean, there's quite a lot of cloud cover in North India there, with probably quite a bit of precipitation in that. Tropical storm warnings then in effect for the whole south coast of Hispaniola, Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and pretty much the rest of the coastline for the Dominican Republic as well. A tropical storm watch remains in effect for the Turks and Caicos Islands. It's 372 kilometers from Jacmel, 404 from Port-au-Prince, 409 from Santo Domingo, 503 from Punta Cana, and 710 from Coburn Town in the Turks and Caicos Islands. The storm will gradually move northwards and has really been struggling of late, with the National Hurricane Center even not sure whether it's actually a tropical cyclone at this point or not. And that's because it's got a few competing centers of circulation right now and potentially a relocation ongoing at this time. Marking all the systems on the map here, from left to right: Harold, Franklin, what's left of Gert there, and what's left of Emily, which is really looking much better in those latest satellite frames and may well be about to become a tropical cyclone again. Just as eyeballing it here, it looks that way to me. Eastern Atlantic there's that other system as well. Got a little bit of rotation about it, but convection is severely lacking. Franklin will be delivering significant rainfall to Hispaniola at this time, and we could be looking at quite a lot of rainfall, which we'll take a look at in a moment. As we switch to the water vapor imagery, and we'll also look at local radar there in South Texas as we watch Harold move inland. It still has a decent structure about it, but it is of course much weaker at this point, down to a 35-mile-per-hour depression. It was adjudged to make landfall at 50 miles per hour and an estimated pressure of around 998 millibars. So here's Franklin on the water vapor imagery, and really not looking so good either. Lots of dry air, maybe wind shear to the western side of that. You probably won't catch it on this imagery, but there is a circulation well to the west of the convection there, south of central Haiti, and that could possibly be a center relocation, but it's so far away from where the convection is right now. That's why there's big question marks about whether it is classifiable as a named storm. Sea surface temperatures in the eastern Pacific are looking decent still off the coast of Mexico. A little bit of cool slot though now near the coast that juts out the most there, but generally good temperatures. Atlantic, Gulf of Mexico still piping hot, although a slight dent in the coast near Texas after Harold. Near Haiti and Dominican Republic around 29-30 degrees Celsius, and even warmer as it moves off towards the northeast there for Franklin. And for other systems, Emily getting it back over warmer waters, which is why that convection's blowing up. Western Pacific still got loads of warm water for quite a large area there, 30 degrees plus for large parts of the Philippine Sea and the South China Sea, and up through the Ryukyu Islands as well. Bay of Bengal still around 29 degrees, a little bit cooler now on the eastern side of the sub-basin, 28 degrees there. Arabian Sea still hit and miss right now, but it will come back strong in the later season. Southwest Indian Ocean is still pretty cool, although staying decent near northern Madagascar. Australian region, similar story here, hasn't changed very much. Well into the winter months here in these two areas, and in the South Pacific, around Fiji, still holding on to 26 degrees Celsius waters in the north. Sea surface temperatures are a little bit above average in the Western Pacific. Still that cool pool there, which is gradually spreading further west in the Eastern Pacific, and a little cool trail after Hillary, but the rest of the Eastern Pacific looking okay. Atlantic is still quite a bit above average, particularly in the Gulf of Mexico, the northern part, and in the Eastern and Central Atlantic main development region up to 3 degrees above average. Also, the Gulf Stream has a little bit of an indentation above average as well, which is also producing good oceanic heat content, as you can see here. Caribbean also extremely high amounts of energy there, of course, as we've been talking about for quite some time. Eastern Pacific also looking fairly okay off the coast of Mexico, extending out a fair distance. And in the Western Pacific, really building back in near the Philippines now after those recent typhoons knocked some of it out. Computer models then, this is a GFS taking a look at all of these systems that are currently active, but Franklin dead center there, and we can trace its track. It's very undecided in where it ends up going, and there is low confidence in that forecast track, some serious potential for stalling, and for it to wobble around for quite a bit there. And there's Emily's track, redeveloping in the end anyway, as it turns more baroclinic into the extratropical zones there, so I think there is a decent chance of it redeveloping. Now, Eastern Pacific, 3 potential systems. So that first one, potential tropical cyclone into Nicaragua, which is interesting in and of itself. The second system there heading towards Mexico, really blowing up near the end of that 5-day period into a hurricane. And on the third system, on the left hand side, you can see that developing late on in that run, the last of those 3 systems to develop, so a really interesting scenario there. Western Pacific, these 2 systems, the first one very broad in the east and really not sure where exactly that centre is going to come from. It might have competing centres for its whole life and may not become a tropical cyclone. And the other area there looks like it gets itself better acquainted as it first moves northwards and then back towards the south, towards the Philippine Islands, a very interesting track to begin with. And then after that, it may try to turn towards the east. We'll check back in a minute. Looking at rainfall expectations then, not just for the Dominican Republic, but also for Central America and Mexico. You can see in the next 7 days, all of these 3 storms in question, which will affect all of these different areas. Dominican Republic could still see up to 16 inches of further rainfall, maybe even a bit higher than that actually, as noted there on these charts. That's up to nearly 500 millimeters of rain, 14 inches for Central America, 350 millimeters, and at least 16 along the coast of Mexico. But if that storm stalls near the landfall zone, then it could be much higher. Of course, the storm hasn't formed yet, so still big question marks on what actually happens with that, but certainly something to watch out for in terms of early warning there, a potential big rain threat. Longer range then, day 5 to 10. Here is Franklin continuing and seeing much better days in the future there, becoming a substantial hurricane and then shooting off towards the northeast, maybe a threat to Atlantic Canada. Then this second system, possibly a brief spin up there in the Gulf of Mexico that tries to develop, although despite all of that energy and heat, it doesn't really get very far. I don't know what's going on there, whether it gets heavily wind sheared, but certainly Franklin becomes an enormous extratropical cyclone and delivers a big punch to Greenland. There's that hurricane making landfall in Mexico, and then this second system does become a hurricane eventually, better late than never, and starts on its way towards the west, continuing out to sea and nowhere near land areas, turns towards the north and does a gradual recurve, and I can tell you later on in that, because we won't be showing long range, it continues turning northeastwards and dies out at sea. But certainly 2 hurricanes is what the GFS is predicting within that 10-day period there in the Eastern Pacific. Westpac then, more messy stuff going on out east, maybe another tropical cyclone or two, and eventually this one that we're currently tracking in the west develops, and in the end we get two very powerful typhoons in tandem moving up towards the northwest there, almost like a pair of eyes at the end. Well, they literally are actually hurricane eyes, typhoon eyes, and eventually that western one moves into the East China Sea through the southern Ryukyu Islands and may be about to stall and reaches Category 4 status there. You can scan the barcode and take a look at the Force 13 merch store with all of our usual items, including full season and individual storm animations on your request. Also, our Still Waiting for Hone t-shirts are of course still available because Hone is still being waited upon. Silly range then, day 10 to 16. That Gulf of Mexico system doesn't do much, but some energy transference perhaps leads to another tropical cyclone forming along the coast of the southeast of the United States and shoots up towards the northeast, turning post-tropical quite quickly, and then potentially 2 or maybe even 3 other systems towards the end of that loop towards day 16, certainly 2 of them near the end, but don't forget this is very speculative and long range, and I wouldn't put anything on either of these forming just yet. That one on the right hand side forms right along the coast of Africa at first and then moves through the Cape Verde Islands as a significant storm. And then these 2 in the Western Pacific, well, where have we seen this before? That storm stalling quite a lot near the Ryukyu Islands. Don't forget, that's where it is right now. So this would be an extremely odd track once again. We've already had one of those odd tracks this year, if not more than one. So certainly quite wacky. That second system moving on through Japan there, and then off towards the north. And I'm not sure that's actually a full loop there because it's playing more slowly, but eventually it looks like that second typhoon moves into China. Force 13's Eastern Tour is just less than 2 weeks away now. You can join us in Athens, Singapore, Cebu or Hong Kong if you're around, and for meet and greet and whatever else, just send us a message if you would like to arrange something. And you can join us on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13 for tropical weather and general weather chat with over 3,600 members from all around the world. On this day, a special one, and it is the former longest lasting storm in the world, still the longest in the northern hemisphere, Hurricane John, and a very powerful category 5 it was. On this day in 1994, it reached its peak intensity of 175 miles per hour and a pressure well below 929. That's just the pressure they give operationally because that's what recon found, but it strengthened quite a bit after that pressure was seen. Chris was about to die off in the Atlantic, and look at the Westpac, we're already up to number 20, which would eventually become Typhoon Gladys, I think it was. I almost forgot the name there. In the Atlantic, the next name on this year's list is Idalia. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Irwin, and in the Central Pacific, we are indeed still waiting for Hone. 43 storms so far this year. In the Western Pacific, the next name is still Saola, and in the North Indian Ocean, it is Tej. Code yellow for Franklin right now, mainly on account of the large rain threat. Of course, as we saw earlier on, that probably is the primary threat from the storm. Australian region, the next name is Jasper, Southwest Indian Ocean, Alvaro, and in the South Pacific, it's Lola. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.